Western Ag Network on the road from the 140th Montana Stockgrowers Mid-Year Meeting, brought to you by AgRisk Advisors.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here on the Western Ag Network as we are on the road, really kicking off our summer schedule, traveling across Western Ag Network country, meeting with farmers and ranchers and sharing with you the top issues and headlines coming from our summer meeting season. And throughout the summer, we will be bringing you coverage brought to you by our friends at AgRisk Advisors, with you no matter the weather, providing risk management solutions for farmers and ranchers out in the countryside. And Russell, as we're here in Miles City, Montana, celebrating 140 years, the stock growers are very proud of that history, but they've been looking towards the future. And also, we're celebrating 100 years of the Fort Keogh USDA Research Facility, also located out here in Miles City. So it's been a full week of learning about our past, but really looking towards the future as well.
Well, it sure has, and it's fun to bring the Montana stock growers back here to Miles City, Montana, where it all began 140 years ago. And this week we've had lots of opportunities to catch up with industry leaders. In fact, Lane actually talked with the president of the Montana Stockgrowers Association, John Grandy.
As we continue our conversations on the road this week from the 140th Montana Stockgrowers Association mid-year meeting, our coverage brought to you by AgRisk Advisors. We're joined today by President of the Association, Mr. John Grandy. And John, as we're gathered here at the Eastern Montana Fairgrounds, what does it mean coming here celebrating 140 years of this association and the work it does for family producers across the state?
Well, it's a privilege, it's an honor, it's a responsibility, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it is a great legacy to be a part of an organization that was founded here in Miles City 140 years ago. And we're conscious of that, we're looking at that history, we're very aware of it this week, but we're also here in the present, getting our work done for this week, and that work is to look towards the future and see how we need to best position our ranching partners for the next 140 years.
Now, obviously, as we gather here, the creation of policy for the grassroots policy book to give the stock growers team in the capital of Helena and also out in Washington, D.C. is a very big item. Are there any new policy issues that are coming up, or are things pretty level when it comes to policy creation?
I would say fairly level that we know. I mean, you never know what's going to come up that we might not be aware of, but really what we're aware of coming up, there's going to be some new discussion. Well, new to stock growers, it's not new on a national issue, but some new policy regarding the USDA food guide recommendations and how we think that those are not at all based on sound science, and we're going to be looking at that. Otherwise, you know, we're discussing, as you well know, we've been traveling the state over the last couple months, having listening sessions with our members and people who aren't even our members, and we've had an incredible amount of input, and a lot of that's not really quite ready to come into policy at this meeting, but we're having discussions about what we need to take from that to change our policy. And in addition to that, there's always and this isn't the exciting stuff, but our committee people, our committee chairs are extremely diligent about going through the policy book and just cleaning things up. You know, what policies do we have that maybe are a little out of date? What do we need to change? And so those aren't major things, but there's some housekeeping that our people are really good about getting done.
And I saw one of those policy points is that the president has to buy a round for everybody downtown at the Bison Bar. Isn't that in the fine print in that policy
You
book?
know, I'm not aware of that one. That's why the fine print is important. But we could make some arrangements on that.
And John, again, as we look towards the future of the association, how important is it that members be engaged and help create that policy to look towards the next 140 years?
It's just so incredibly important because that's you know, we say this and maybe sometimes people get tired of hearing it, but it's so true. We are a grassroots organization. Our policies come from our membership, the individuals that come here or the people that go to their local affiliates and create policy so those affiliate people can bring them here. And that's what drives this all, and that's why we've been going out into the country, you know, listening to people that don't always have the opportunity to come to these meetings. I mean, that's what it's all about, and we're so fortunate. There's good things going on there. We'll talk some more about that later today, but our membership is growing, and that's a healthy thing. And so we have to continue. I don't think our membership would be growing if we weren't listening to our members, but we need to continue that.
Well, again, John, good luck this week here in Miles City, and again, we'll be seeing you at the Bison Bar maybe a little.
Very good. It's a possibility. Thanks, Lane.
Well, again, we will be having more conversations on the road this week from Miles City at the 140th Montana Stockgrowers Association mid-year meeting.
Certainly a great conversation there you had with John Grandy, Lane, but we do also need to mention he never did make good on buying us or anybody else, for that matter, that drink downtown, did he?
No, but I didn't even make it downtown.
I
go to
didn't
the
either.
historic Bison Bar. I went to bed a little early, but we also caught up with leaders from the national stage. Wyoming's very own Mark Isley drove north to join us in Miles City, and Russell Nemetz was able to catch up with him and hear what was going on the national stage with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association as well.
Well, as we continue our coverage from here in Miles City, Montana, the host of this year's Montana Stockgrowers Association's 140th annual mid-year meeting. You know, it's always great to catch up with industry leaders in attendance at this meeting. Industry leaders from all over the West and all over America for that matter. And this year we're lucky enough to have Mark Isley, Wyoming cattleman, past president of the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association and the current president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And Mark, thanks for making the travels up from Cheyenne and elsewhere to join us here in eastern Montana this week.
It's great to be here. It's like a homecoming. I'm always happy when I can visit any of the associations anywhere, but especially in the West.
Well, there's never a lack of issues in agriculture and never a lack of issues for the beef cattle industry more specifically. First and foremost, let's talk about the farm bill that made it out of the House Agriculture Committee last week. Now it's on to the full House for consideration. Eventually, hopefully it'll get to the Senate. What's your gut feeling? Are we going to get a farm bill this year? And if so, what are some of those key priorities that NCBA has been working hard on?
There's several things. Chairman Thompson did an outstanding job explaining that to everybody, educating them, and getting some bipartisan support. We think that'll hopefully roll forward into the Senate. It's a very, very good thing. Rumor has it, or it's actually been said, that this may be the best of the last 5 farm bills that were done. So we're very optimistic. Some of the things, the programs that are coming out, of course, are conservation, voluntary programs, price protection, risk protection, disaster. Some of the other things like EQIP are funded out of that. So those are some of the key ones we're looking at. Those are huge.
You know, you had a little bit of windshield time coming up here to Miles City as you drove up from your home country down there in Cheyenne, Wyoming, but you've also been putting on some frequent flyer miles in airplanes. Talk about some of your recent trips to Mexico and Australia and the significance of each of those trips to cattle producers here at home.
Those were hugely important because our talks have all revolved around trade, opening up the markets for American beef. Australians love it, they do want it. So we wanted to make sure that we're on board with disease, traceability, sustainability, environmental concerns, and of course, activists who can kind of throw a wrench in everything, and of course, lab cultured meat.
You know, let's talk about the lab cultured meat because you know, despite maybe what mainstream media is telling folks out there on the airwaves, to the contrary, most consumers still want a delicious home-raised live animal. In this case, we're talking about beef, don't they?
Absolutely, and of course we want to promote our beef, but the consumers have every right to know what they're actually getting. They need to know what it is they're purchasing. We need to make sure that the labeling and the standards are on equal footing and that they don't get an advantage over us, like the mistake that milk did, where now we have soy milk, almond milk, etc. Beef should be beef.
And then just what about keeping America's livestock herd, the live animals safe, and also the protein safe that comes in from these other countries? I mean, animal health issues continue to be a big focus of NCBA and others.
That was a huge discussion for us with the other countries. We're keenly aware and very troubled by the fact that USDA and the Biden administration has not kept Brazilian beef out, and same with Paraguayan beef, because their reporting is poor, their reports are not timely, and it has not been well policed. So we're concerned that they're going to risk our industry so they don't hurt the feelings of some diplomats.
You know, we can talk a lot about all the issues in the world, but it basically comes down to producer profitability at the end of the day, Mark. And of course, up here in Montana and the Montana Stockgrowers Association, they have poured an enormous amount of time this spring into traveling around Big Sky Country, putting on town hall meetings about producer profitability and just really trying to get input from members, non-members, non-livestock producers, producers of course, and just doing everything in our power here in Big Sky Country to keep that next generation on these farms and ranches. And I know you've been watching it from Wyoming, and NCBA has been watching it from a national level. I mean, what about this producer profitability effort up here?
I think it's tremendous, and you have to give everybody credit because the Big Sky Country means exactly that. It takes a lot of windshield time to go from one place to another. It's incredibly important. You know, we have a real nice climb right now in cattle prices, which is really good when you go to sell. But we got to make sure that things like inflation, operating costs, labor, those sort of things are in hand. We need to continue to improve our efficiency. We already are really good at what we do, but we can just tweak it and make it a little better, and that's good for everybody.
Hey, last question. I mean, we've talked about a few important issues during this interview. There's always a lot more we could talk all day on, and these issues and more will be talked about this coming July in San Diego as NCBA has its summer business meeting.
Yep. You know, I think one of the other issues I'd like to talk about, and we'll continue to talk about, is the estate tax, the death tax, and the removal of some of those 179 section deductions that really all businesses need, especially the ag industry. So anytime you potentially think about putting a 60% tax on a ranch or a farm, there's no way anybody's going to survive that. So that is also high on our list of priorities because at the end of 2025, the clock will start ticking again.
Hey. Yep, absolutely, and just all the more reason, if you haven't already, pay your dues at the local level, the state level, and pay your dues at the national level. Mark, thanks for coming up here to Miles City and joining us here for the Montana Stockgrowers Association's mid-year meeting. Of course, the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association will be meeting next week in Douglas, and these summer business meetings really continue all summer long. NCBA's summer business meeting the first week of July, and again, you can visit NCBA's website for more of the details there.
Ready for a real PRF partner?
He was willing to track us for a year and provide that data back to us for a year. That's a guy making a pretty big investment.
At AgRisk Advisors, this isn't our first rodeo. We are one of the most experienced in pasture rangeland forage. Honesty, commitment, trust. Many companies use these words. At AgRisk Advisors, we earn them.
Well, throughout history, research has certainly helped transform today's agriculture industry into what it is today. And for the livestock industry, more specifically, Fort Keogh Livestock and Range Research Laboratory here in Miles City, Montana, has certainly made significant contributions to livestock reproduction, nutrition, genetics, and rangeland management. And this year, Fort Keogh is celebrating its 100th anniversary.
You think about 100 years and all the things that have happened in those past 100 years. To me, it's amazing that all the things that have occurred at this site and all the things that they've done to help improve livestock production and also the management of rangelands.
He says that Fort Keogh's massive footprint provides the perfect environment for all the important research being done.
Yeah, that's correct. And I mean, the fact that we have 55,000 acres here to be able to do the research at a scale that's relevant to commercial ranching here in Montana and elsewhere in the Great Plains is very important. And you know, there's not many places that have that much land to do that kind of work. We have 4 livestock herds here that each have different studies on them, and we can do that on this place and be able to look at different aspects of livestock production because we're able to handle 4 herds and to be able to do that in a long-term period.
An important partner for the past 100 years has been Montana State University's Montana Agricultural Experiment Station.
Yes, and we've worked as a team since 1924 when USDA received this location. So from the beginning, we've been partners with Montana State and the Montana Ag Experiment Station, and so we've worked together. The way the system is set up here is the livestock at the location are owned by Montana State University, and they provide their livestock for us to do the research that we do on both from a rangeland standpoint and from the livestock productivity standpoint.
And he says as Fort Keel looks to the next 100 years, continued industry involvement will be absolutely critical.
We at USDA ARS, we depend on our stakeholders to help us in defining the research that they need done. And so we have a customer focus group here that meets periodically, and we discuss and listen to them on what their needs are, and we try to build our research plans based on their needs and trying to address those. And I think over time we've been successful in doing that. There are things that have come out of here that have directly benefited not only producers here in Montana, but elsewhere in the U.S. and the world. And so I think our ability to continue to interact and to work with our stakeholders not only benefits us for research, but through that cycle we can do the research that's needed to help with their bottom line and their productivity.
Now, to commemorate Fort Keogh's 100th anniversary, the USDA's Ag Research Service, along with Montana State University's Montana Agricultural Experiment Station, will be hosting tours along with a special dinner, all in conjunction with this year's Montana Stockgrowers Association's mid-year meeting here in Miles City. Again, congratulations to everyone who has helped make Fort Keogh what it is today, including my father-in-law, Dennis Hoffla. Well, as we continue our coverage from here at the Montana Stockgrowers Association's mid-year meeting in Miles City, Montana, 140 years. And joining us is Turk Stovall, MSGA's second vice president from that Billings country. And Turk, it's always fun to come back to Miles City because after all, this is where it all began 140 years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of rich history here in Miles City, and we got to hear from a historian of how this all came together literally in the 1880s, and just how two local stock growers groups came together and made the Montana Stockgrowers Association. So it's pretty neat to hear that history.
Yeah, absolutely. Now fast forward 140 years, here we are in 2024, and gosh, as always, we've talked a lot about some very important issues for Montana's beef cattle industry. And this spring, though, you and the other officers and staff and leadership have crisscrossed Montana, gaining input on a very important topic, producer profitability. Those are now wrapped up. I guess, what came out of those listening sessions and what was the idea behind it?
Well, these listening sessions started from resolutions that were passed at the annual convention last year, and we really took these resolutions in addition to a directive that passed is saying, hey, let's go and work with Montana farmers and ranchers and not only get feedback from them to work on very important topics of, we need to create a sustainable environment for these ranching communities. We need to really promote multi-generational ranching, and we need to try to find where can we unify this industry? And as we've brought that message across 13 different locations, all the sale barns in the state, our feedback has been overwhelming, Russell. And first of all, producers want to be heard, and we have such great response that now we're trying to say, hey, how can we make best use of this to really carry on and get some wins for Montana farmers and ranchers?
Well, and I think what was really cool about the listening sessions was you asked the participants and anybody that wanted to could speak and about what was top of mind, but you really tried to set the stage. Let's put some of those controversial issues that have divided this industry now for so many years. Let's put those issues aside, bring things back to center and what matters the most, and that's really how and what are we going to do to keep the next generation on these farms and ranches and in food production?
You know, that was one of the most encouraging part that I want to say I personally felt is, you know, when we have gone across the state, we have invited all organizations. And we did have representation of all organizations come to these meetings. And when we say, you know, we have some controversial topics, can we put these aside and really try to focus on where can we have a win? Where it'll make a big difference of keeping our younger producers at home or actually wanting to come back and take over this land. Because Russell, we have to try to keep this land in production. The facts are there are more younger people leaving our business and not coming in than coming or that are going out. And so, excuse me, I said that backwards. There are more people going out of this business than coming in. And so what was really encouraging is if we put our differences aside, there's a lot more things that we agree upon as an industry. We love this industry. And so with that said, it's been a wildfire across this U.S. on people watching what MSGA has done to try to unify and come together and really just talk as neighbors to where, you know what, it wasn't the blizzard that just hit me. It hit us both, or we both had grasshoppers. And so if I have trouble, you come and help me, and I come and help you. So can we just continue to create that same environment on our policy making? Because the one thing we have done is we have confused our politicians. And so we need to be able to come as a unified voice. And so we've gotten the feedback on what's the most important topics. And now what we're trying to say is what topics can we unify as an industry?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to follow up and ask Nestor is where does MSGA go from here? We're at the mid-year meeting. You've presented producer profitability during a panel this week. You've gathered, you know, hours and hours of comments and just other important thoughts from cattle producers and, you know, those involved with Montana's #1 industry, agriculture, this spring. Where do we go now?
So the one thing we just met as a board and our task force meets, and that's always been the question is where do we go from here? And so what we're really looking for is what are the most important topics that are very time sensitive. Hands down, the elephant in the room is the estate tax. And that is going to be one of the most important topics that we need to get a handle on. We think it is one of the most detrimental things to family farms and ranches, as well as small businesses across the country. And can we get together as an industry and work together on that? And there are other topics like labor. This has to be addressed. We need to see what programs are really helping young farmers and ranchers. And the other topic that has been really neat to talk about is this mentorship program of trying to work with ranches that are already helping other younger operators or new generation operators get up and going.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, you know, just all the more reason if folks haven't already done so, you know, pay your dues, you know, at the local and state and even national level. Pay your dues for whatever organization and cause that you believe in, because it's going to take all of us working together, as Turk mentioned during this interview, you know, to keep this industry alive and thriving for generations to come. We appreciate your time, Turk. We know you got to get back in there and still a lot of important work to get done here in Miles City before we conclude this mid-year meeting. But in the meantime, for more information about the Montana Stockgrowers Association's Producer Profitability Initiative, you can just visit them online at mtbeef.org.
Now, this is just a glimpse of all the conversations and results from the Montana Stockgrowers Association's Producer Profitability Initiative. Later on our social media channels, we're going to have the full report that stockgrowers shared with attendees at this year's mid-year event. And actually, go back and watch one of our former podcast videocasts where we sat down at one of the local livestock markets in Great Falls, Montana, where we discussed in depth more of the details of the producer profitability initiative that is spreading not only in Montana but spreading across the nation. But a lot of great talks and solutions, Russell, being created to help producers stay in business and make a go of it out in the countryside.
Yeah, absolutely. Producer profitability, that's what it's all about, whether it's here in Montana or across the West or across America for that matter. It's been a great week here in Miles City, Montana at the Montana Stockgrowers Association's mid-year meeting. Again, a big thanks to our friends at AgRisk Advisors for sponsoring this coverage on programs like this and our radio programs and so much more. And yeah, it's just been a great week. And that's going to do it for us here in Miles City, Montana. For Lane Nordlund and Paul Humphrey and the entire Western Ag Network team, we'll catch you next time.
Western Ag Network on the road from the 140th Montana Stockgrowers Mid-Year Meeting, brought to you by AgRisk Advisors.